I'm Jodie Copley. I'm a Senior Lecturer and Clinical Education Program Director in Occupational Therapy at the University of Queensland. In addition to those roles, I also have the role of Clinical Educator in our university clinics here. In terms of giving feedback to students throughout their placement, the feedback I've had from students is that they really appreciate specific feedback and they appreciate being able to clarify the feedback. Sometimes they don't automatically clarify it, but as an educator, I think it's really useful to prompt them to do that. I do that by asking them, what have you just heard me say? What do you think what are the main points there that I've covered? What do you think you need to focus on next from what I've just mentioned, so that I can see what their perceptions are, because we all think that we're being very clear, and often we are, but there's a lot of different ways that people can interpret that information. Sometimes for educators it's difficult to deliver constructive feedback or feedback about what students really need to focus on. The way that we do that is a bit of a balancing act, because we want to be supportive, but we also want to be clear and definite about what we're expecting them to do. So I think over my time as a clinical educator, I have, developed my own style of using a supportive demeanour, but being very clear and direct at the same time. So the emphasis is sort of, I need you to do this, but I'll help you to get there. We'll do it together, but I really do need you to do it. This is where we're going. So they're left in no doubt what you're expecting, but they're also not left feeling like it's all up to them and they're on their own, because you are, after all, their educator, and you're going to scaffold and support and do what you can to assist them with that. So clarity is critical so that they don't miss the message. I think sometimes as OTs we're very good at using positive words and phrases and maintaining the students' confidence, which is great. Occasionally, sometimes more than occasionally, that results in the students missing the message or missing the feedback you're giving them. Our classic feedback sandwich that we use sometimes, say something positive, something you've got to work on, something positive again. That works sometimes, and where it works, I think it's really useful, but sometimes it means that the student misses the part in the middle. So it's worthwhile, once again, checking with them what they've heard, but also being really explicit about that. Even with your non-verbals, because sometimes students will be going from your demeanour as an educator, and if you're looking very positive and smiling and nodding and saying, well, that went really well, and yeah, this wasn't so great, but I'm sure that we'll be able to get a handle on that, they'll come away with the message that everything's going swimmingly, when actually what your intention might have been was to highlight or emphasise something you really wanted them to do. And most OTs are great communicators, so I think it's useful for us to use our skills in emphasis and our interaction skills to really highlight some of those things that you want them to address in a supportive way. The other thing that's very important about feedback is, I think, that we ask the students for feedback, and we do that on a regular basis. So, for one thing, it demonstrates, or it models to the student, that receiving feedback that asking for feedback and inviting feedback is a professional skill, and that and it also models to them how you take on feedback as well. So I will usually do that certainly at the halfway point of the placement, but often more regularly than that as well, so that I get a sense of, how's this working for you? Is there anything that we should think about doing differently? Those sorts of things. And that really helps them to feel like they're collaborators and inputting into the learning process, that it's a partnership in their learning, it's a, you know, they're contributing just as much to it as you are. So yeah, two-way feedback is the ideal situation if you can promote that throughout the placement.